The weather has been dreadful lately, and I felt like I ran out of my creative juice. So I went online and searched for some interesting gear reviews. You heard it right, gear reviews. That's why sometimes I question myself whether I'm a photography enthusiast or just a camera gear junkie. But as I was searching for Fujifilm GFX50S reviews, I stumbled across this website, which was written by one of my favorite Fujifilm photographer, Jonas Rask. And it's these few sets of images that really caught my eye and stirred up my thoughts. As I was never a big fan of nighttime photography, especially nighttime portraits. But these images, they look really appealed to me, not just from a aesthetic perspective, but also from a technical perspective. I kept wondering if I can take some nighttime portraits similar to these. And I immediately thought about the LED lights I use for my background lighting, and I've also got one of them here. And I thought, maybe I should assign myself an assignment, which is to shoot some nighttime portraits just like the ones that we saw, but with a little twist. I wanted to add that sort of cyberpunk blue-pink color palette to it, and it might just work. And I know that I will probably do quite a bit of post-processing to get the color right. So I picked up my trusty Fuji GFX50S, which has 16-bit of color depth, and I thought that might come in handy in post-processing. And I think the photos came out of it might have just proved me right. You know what, since there are so many misconceptions about color depth or bit depth, that I might just talk about it in the later part of this video. But let's first take a look at the photos I've got with these light tubes and see if you like it. Alright, well, I think overall I did a decent job, even though they're not perfect. But considering it's the first time I've done anything like this, I think I'm quite content. So the takeaway here is really that when you thought about an interesting idea, or you read about something that's really inspiring, my suggestion is to go ahead and do it, which might just turn out to be a great learning experience, which is definitely true in this particular case. Now let's talk about bit depth or color depth. Another concept that you might be more familiar with is color space or color gamut, which you've probably seen in the technical specification of your monitor or laptop screen. And the color space or color gamut here basically means how wide of a color spectrum the display can cover. Now, bit depth or color depth is a little bit different. If you have, let's say, a bit of color depth, and let's take color green as an example, it basically means you have 2 to the times of 8, which is 256 shades of green that can be displayed. So that naturally means if you have a higher color depth or bit depth, it means it's gonna help to produce a more gradual color gradation. But we know that the JPEGs that we see on a day-to-day basis are of only 8 bit in terms of color depth. And that's no coincidence, because most of us can only perceive about 8 bit color depth. Any more than that, we probably couldn't tell the difference. Now you might be asking, then what's the point of 14-bit or even 16-bit in some of the medium format cameras nowadays? Well, if I tell you that you'll be able to notice a difference in a direct comparison between 14-bit image and a 16-bit image, then I'll be lying, because you can't. But when you do post-process, that will make a big difference. Let's say you are manipulating a 14-bit RAW file against an 8-bit JPEG. You'll notice that the JPEG file will likely to fall apart pretty quickly once you do some heavy-duty editing. But the RAW file can withstand a much greater magnitude of modification. So, what color depth actually brings is the latitude of post-processing capabilities. And as you have seen from the pictures I've showed you, the end result and the original image in terms of color is vastly different. And if you would do that with a JPEG file, you would probably notice a lot of color banding and other artifacts in it. But the 16-bit RAW file really did hold up pretty well, I would say. And one more thing to note here is that 16-bit versus 14-bit is not just 2 bits more, because 2 to the time of 2 is 4. It's 4 times the amount of color information that was stored. That's why you'll probably notice a much bigger difference than you would have imagined while editing a 16-bit versus a 14-bit RAW file. Alright, so that's enough about color bit depth, and I hope you've learned something from it. If you like it, please give me a thumb up, and if you love contents like this, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!